Hello, welcome to Nancy's interview with John Edmondson, who is a voiceover actor. Nancy met him when she auditioned some voiceover actors to do the narration for some of her books, and she was doing that through ACX, which is Amazon's company that matches up authors with artists who will narrate the books for them. So on ACX they refer to themselves as producers because they take over the whole thing. They produce the whole audio file, which is the narration of your book. And we wanted to know a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes and what it takes to be a really good voiceover artist. So that's why we arranged this interview, and I hope you enjoy it.
John, what should an author look for when they're looking for a producer? Are there certain types of voices? How does that work as an author? How can I choose the best person for my book?
I was once told by a coach that there's really no competition for voiceover artists or actors because it really is a personal, subjective view. If you like the voice and you think it will represent the material in the way that you want it represented as the author, then I think that's how you can best select the voice. If you're put off by it when you listen to an audition or you listen to voice samples as an author, then others might be as well, and it may not work for your material.
How do you decide if you want to submit an audition for a project?
Well, naturally, this is a business for me. This is my business, and I certainly want to do everything I can to keep the kids in shoes and food on the table. So that is one of the aspects that I consider when I look at the books that are available to read or any material that I may look at providing voiceover services for. But I also want to be able to connect to the material. If I don't like the material or if I don't enjoy what I read in the audition script, then I may pass. It's because I'm not going to do a service to myself or to the author or ultimately to the people who are paying for all of us, the listener and the reader. If I can't present the material in a way that they're going to enjoy, then I would take a pass on presenting an audition.
You know, something that impressed me when I worked with you on my project, it was clear to me when you were reading a quote that you had enough of a voice change or an inflection that I really could tell it was a quote. And when you did my California Gold Rush project, you took on a slight accent. How do you determine when and how to do that?
Boy, I wish I had a scientific answer for you. I read it, and if I see it in the material that needs, if obviously if there's quotes around something, it's pretty obvious that there's a quotation, or if you come right out and state it in the material. I try to feel the material, and if I see something that lends itself to an accent or lends itself to a change in voice, then I try to apply that based on what I think. And naturally, if an author feels otherwise, then we would work through that as part of the discussion after I had submitted that particular piece of work.
Well, once you receive the text for a project, and this goes back to what we've just talked about, what process do you go through once you have that text in hand?
Well, I certainly sit down and read the entire text. Certain things that I've studied while doing this is that if you just jump in and start recording, you may end up with a surprise halfway through the text that you have to go back and redo all your work. But I want to know the material, and if I can read through it once, I then know the material enough that I can go in and start recording. Now, I am currently working on a rather complex fiction with a lot of dialogue and a lot of different characters, which does provide additional challenges. So as I'm reading the material, I try to visualize who that character is and what they might sound like. And certainly one of the challenges when reading material with a lot of characters is maintaining the consistency of that character throughout the material. It wouldn't do to have an Irish accent halfway through, for the first half of the book, and all of a sudden it turns into an Indian accent for the second half of the book.
What kind of training have you had or do you go through to do different accents?
I'd like to say that I had some formal training, but I haven't. I've just kind of picked it up, really. I mean, I've had formal training in terms of my work. I studied oral interpretation in college, and my degree was in speech communication. I've been in sales and marketing for 15 years, so I've got a lot of public speaking experience and a lot of interacting with people all over the world. So I've picked up a lot of, I've got an ear, I guess, for it, so I've been able to pick up different accents as I've traveled around in my corporate work. So it's all kind of culminated in just life experience and things that I've done through school and my corporate experience.
Well, you do a great job with it.
Well, thank you.
John, how does a producer, and I know this is kind of a broad question, but how does a producer decide whether to work on a straight fee, a royalty only, or a combination of both?
Again, it comes back to a business decision. Do I feel that a piece of material would lend itself to strong sales, and thus the return on a royalty would be strong? I'm thinking that in many cases I would prefer to have a pay for performance because I know that it's guaranteed income. I'm not waiting for that royalty check. I will tell you that I did one book that I did not expect. It was on a royalty basis, and in some cases, as I've gotten started in this business, I've gone for the royalty work simply because I knew that I could get it, or I was selected, and I said, well, what the heck, it's practice, it's good to take the royalty work. And I did one book where I didn't expect to do well from a royalty standpoint, and the author was on a major cable TV show as part of his book tour, and sales shot through the roof. So from a voice actor standpoint, I think authors ought to do as many book tours as possible to increase sales. But that's kind of the key where I want to start, where I want to learn what I can do as a producer to work with the author to increase marketing. Because once I do a royalty share book, now it's a partnership. We've got to work together to drive the sales up for that book. So I want to know what I can do to help. And I wouldn't say that I wouldn't help somebody that I'd done on a pay for performance. Certainly I've got more incentive on a royalty share. But if you came to me and said, well, John, we did that Gold Rush book. I've got this interview that I set up for a part of the book tour to kind of promote it. Would you mind joining me to help boost the audio sales? I'd be happy to join you in something like that, or doing what I could to help boost sales. Because ultimately, the more my voice gets out there, the better opportunity I have to get more business.
Right. What kind of equipment does a producer typically have? Do you have a at-home studio?
I do. I have a vocal booth. It's not soundproof, but the room that I put it in is pretty quiet. And then with the technology that I've got, I can dampen out a lot of the sound. And the vocal booth has got a lot of sound deadening qualities inside it, a lot of studio foam. And so essentially what a voice actor needs is a quiet place to record. They need a quality microphone and a computer with some recording software and editing software on it. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's a pretty simple business to get into if you want to do that.
And about how long does it take to record a book? You've told me before that there are X number of words take you X hours.
ACX has a guide of about 10,000 words per hour, and then it takes me 3 to 5 times the amount of time it takes to read to do the editing and post-production cleanup. So the way I read is I'll read the book, and if I catch myself stumbling through the read, then I'll pick up wherever I stumbled and just keep reading, as opposed to stopping the recording and trying to go back and find where I messed up and then start over. I just keep reading, and whoops, I made a mistake, I'll start that sentence again. So what that does is that elongates the editing process on the back end. So I can go through and read the book fairly quickly, and then I spend the time editing. Some actors will read the book and whoops, I made a mistake. They'll go in, they'll pick it up right where they made the mistake, and they spend less time editing, but they spend more time in the booth. And the way I've set my booth up, I'm standing most of the time, so I'd prefer to sit. So the editing is where I do my sitting.
Is there something that you think authors should know about doing an audio project?
Yes, when writing the book, if you think that you might want to make it an audio book, think about the writing style that's being used. One of the books that I've read, the writing style it almost was a stream of consciousness, and the punctuation seemed to be pointless. And not to mention the grammar and the other things. So as a voice actor, if I'm reading through it and I'm struggling understanding the meaning and the grammar that's being used or the punctuation, it's going to take me a lot longer to get it done, and I may not be quite as happy with the author when I'm done with that, unless the author pays more attention. Now, one of the things that I also have noticed is if there's a book that's being written with pictures or charts and graphs, but there's still an author wants to make an audiobook out of that material, there needs to be a way to either describe the chart so that I don't have to think of it as a voice actor because I may miss the point of the chart and it's the author's material. So it would be helpful if there's an audio version to have a text description of the chart inserted instead of the chart or the picture. Or another idea that I had when I was talking with a prospective author was, what if you set up a website where all the charts were available so that I could reference a chart and at the beginning of the book say, here's a link, write this link down when you're not in your car, and then you can go look at these charts and reference back when you're at a spot where you're able to do that. So there's certain things that you need to think about as you're writing the book, how it would be translated into just strictly audio.
We hope you enjoyed Nancy's interview with John. It's great to get a behind-the-scenes glimpse of what goes on with the narrators, or producers as they're sometimes called. You can find John on Facebook at facebook.com/John Edmondson Voiceover. And you can find our interviews and recordings right here on YouTube, and we'll be posting again real soon. Thanks for watching.